So this week on Barfly, I thought that I would talk about cocktail books. A lot of you in the comments have asked me what cocktail books I have and what I look for in cocktail books, so I'm going to break down cocktail books the way that I usually think about them for you. We're going to be talking about a bunch of books. Very early in the... Was it really early? Yeah, I think pretty early in this channel, we had a segment that we called Bartender's Book Club, where I would review a cocktail book that I read and tell you all about it. Today, we're just going to be doing groupings of books, so we're just doing like small blurbs about it and really not really too much about the content of the book so much as just like why I think you should have them and what should be on their shelves. And the first thing that I've got to tell you about how I start thinking about cocktail books is that I group them in three categories. I group them as a beginner, intermediate, and advanced books. And it is true that the vast majority of cocktail books will fall in the intermediate category because most people that write cocktail books, whether they're professional bartenders or enthusiasts that have gotten popular and written a book, or people that have studied one subject and written a book, they usually tend to assume that you know the basics going in, and so they're giving you really recipe-heavy books, and those will be falling in the intermediate. But today I thought we would start with the beginner sections of books, and so I have a little pile here that I think you guys should all have. This is by no means all of them, but this is a very good place to start. And where we're gonna start is with one of my favorite authors, Robert Simonson. So Robert Simonson has not been, I don't think, an actual bartender, but he has been a cocktail writer for many, many years. He is very, 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 is it proper to say he is imbued into the cocktail scene of New York? I mean, he's very much a part of the cocktail scene. He knows everybody from Wondrich to all the famous people. He's talked to every single person. And he writes really fantastic books. And what he tends to do, which I really like, is that he writes books that are on a single subject. So I have two of his books here, but he has a few more. He has a book on the old fashioned. He has a book on modern classic cocktails. He's got these two books as well as his latest book, which is the Encyclopedia of Cocktails, that really goes through just like A to Z in cocktails, which is awesome. I think it's really great to start with books that are based on a single cocktail or single spirits or a grouping of cocktails because it really deep dives into those drinks. And I think that as far as single cocktail books are concerned, it's really important to understand the history of cocktails and where they came from, and also to learn and understand the variations and riffs that came out of those cocktails over time. Because at some point, people who read cocktail books are reading cocktail books to learn not only cocktail recipes for entertaining, but also learning cocktail recipes for maybe creating their own cocktails or being able to work in a bar program themselves. So having something like a 3-ingredient cocktail book or a martini book or the old-fashioned book or modern classic cocktails is just a really good place to start. So I recommend every single one of Robert Simonson's books. The only thing that these books lack is talking about technique. I think that Robert Simonson really focuses on the history, which is really important, but not necessarily the technique of making the drinks. Which brings me to The Joy of Mixology by Gary Regan. This book has been around for a really long time. This is an updated and revised version that puts in a couple of sections of writing on technique and history, but then also has more contemporary recipes from some of the more contemporary bartenders in New York City. Gary Regan passed away, sadly, a few years ago, but this book is a great legacy and it will live on. What I really love about this book is that the whole front of the book talks about a little bit of history. You get like a primer on cocktail history. Then you get a bunch of technique stuff. You get Gary Regan's version of what the root cocktails are, and those are the root cocktail categories that have sprung out and given birth to all of the multitude of variations that you find in bars these days. And then you get a lot of really nicely recipes, some of them from what we would think of as the dark ages of cocktails, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, but then also redone really well. I've recreated a bunch of cocktails out of this book, and I absolutely love it. It is completely indispensable, and you will learn a lot from it. These two books, arguably, I probably should have mentioned first. These are David Wondrich's first and second book, which are Imbibe and Punch. Really, one is sort of the continuation of the other. These are cocktail history books, but what I love about Imbibe is that...
Oh, that was the Punch.
Oh, sorry. I have to switch them. But what I really love about Imbibe is that it really chronicles Wondrich's foray into Jerry Thomas's 1862 classic cocktail book, The Bon Vivant's Guide, or How to Mix Drinks. So in Imbibe, Wondrich goes through the 20 cocktail recipes that are in the Bon Vivant's Guide, then gives historical notes and stories and anecdotes around it, and it's really, really brilliant. This was one of the very first cocktail books that I seriously read when I was really new behind the stick, and it's one that everyone should read. Luckily for us, he has a revised edition, which is the one that I have right here. Punch, also very important book. This talks about the history of punch. Cocktails really did come out of punch. I don't want to give too much away about it, but right here between these two books, you really have like a complete early history of cocktails. Brad Thomas Parsons has really focused on Amari and bitters, and I just want to make sure that I knew which one was where. Bitters are those tinctures that we used in America in the 1800s and that came, very possibly from Europe in the 1700s, that we used to cure ailments that then made their way into bittering down cocktails and providing balance and flavor. And then Amaro, of course, is the digestif and aperitif liqueurs that are very much centered around Italy, and that's why they use an Italian word for it. But it really came from what they think was like 10,000 years ago in China, and then all the spices made their way through the Silk Road into Europe, and then people started using that in like ancient Rome over time to aromatize wine. Amaro, though, is a distilled liqueur. It's a little bit more contemporary. It's got about 200 years of history, and also has been used as a way to digest food, and then also as a cure-all in certain areas. They're highly regional, and so they're hard to understand. And also they only fit into loose categories. And so reading a book like this is really essential in understanding them. And of course, you have to learn how bitters work and how Amari work when you are creating cocktails, because they are such a big part of cocktail building. And last but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my own book. My book, Home Bartending Mastery, was very much written with the beginner in mind, even though I think that some more intermediate to advanced bartenders and cocktail makers will get something great out of this book. It really was, kind of for beginners. What separates this book from some of the other cocktail books that you'll find is that it is really based a lot more on the technique of making drinks and a little bit less on the recipes. So some of the recipes you're gonna find in other books, but what we talk about is in making those recipes, all of the little tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to help you make the best possible cocktail. And while some cocktail books do go into technique here and there, I try to go as in-depth as I can. If you want to start with the book, I think that Home Bartending Mastery is a good place to start because we talk about technique, and then you can utilize a lot of these other books that are more historically based, and then you have the techniques to recreate those cocktails. Because what I like to say is that anybody could go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon and pick up a Wolfgang Puck book, but when you're executing Wolfgang Puck recipes, you're not gonna be executing the way that they do at Spago. And the reason for that is that the difference between you and someone like Wolfgang Puck is technique. That's the difference. It's just technique and then of course experience. So what I try to do with my book is give you the techniques so that you can create the best possible cocktail at home. And I think that's it for my beginner books. Pick up these books if you want to. If you don't, links are in the description below to our Amazon store or to our website if it's available there. And I don't know. Happy mixing.